Hello, happy Friday, everyone. With the 18th episode of HeleCloud Talks Cloud, we have 5 people from HeleCloud. I'm just kidding. We haven't hired Nina actually because she's a baby. I'm just going to give her to her daddy, who's going to take care of her while mommy is working. Because this is what fathers do.
Very good.
Now, we have Farid and Choon Ming. Farid, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Oh, hello. Let's see. I am an engineer with a software developer background. I'm from Iran, and I used to live in Malaysia. And yeah, somehow I'm a AWS Cloud Solutions Architect now. I don't know how it happened.
I like the way you say somehow you're AWS Cloud Solutions Architect.
Yes.
How
about you, Choon Ming?
While you were sleeping late and laying in bed, as you just explained to us, poor people with children. Probably why I'm not a solutions architect professional or anything. So, Choon Ming, do you have children or certifications?
I have only one of them, so which is not children.
Okay, certifications then.
Yes, indeed. Okay, yes. So my name is Choon Ming. I'm from Malaysia. That's where I met Farid and Walter. I came from a system administration background, and I'm the professional services team lead in HeleCloud. Everything else you need to know about me is you just need to feed me to keep me happy.
I'm the same.
Yes. When we so before we joined HeleCloud, we were all in data, and both Farid and Choon Ming were in all in data, and we food was basically one of the hiring criteria. If you're not a foodie, then it's probably not a really good place for you to work.
Yeah, but didn't you get a lot of hangry people just before lunch?
Oh yeah, especially when it was late. So
yeah,
Yeah.
We'd order lunch, and then it would come late, and then the whole office was like, "Where's the food?" Yes, we also have some cloud topics to talk about. So let me get started. So the first one is Corey Quinn's weekly blog post. It seems like we have him every other week here, but he just happens to write good stuff that I think should use extra highlighting. A week ago or so, he joked somewhere that there are 17 ways to run a container in AWS, and then it turns out that it's actually 17 ways to run a container in AWS, which is quite A, impressive, and B, I think we talked about it. I don't know if that was on the live stream, but we talked about it before that AWS has the business strategy to encourage good solutions. Regardless of whether a different part of the company already has a good solution, where in Azure they try to unify all of these streams, and both of these strategies have their own merits. And one of the things that I really like in AWS is there are like, I don't know, 10, 12 different database variations. There are 17 ways to run a container, and that seems overwhelming. But when you get down to the weeds, it's actually really nice that you can be super specialized and pick the use case that works for you.
I'm not on the same level with you. I feel like AWS somehow, instead of like improving one service, take it to the next level, sometimes just decide to make a new service and then leave that one running. And
yes, I've seen that as well.
Good example of this is that the Elastic stock.
Yeah. But then from my perspective.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I would disagree with you because I came from a system administration background, right? So I like tinkering things on my own. And if AWS would just provide one solution that fits all, or it makes things a little bit more complex, in my opinion. and providing different ways of doing it might seem excessive in the very beginning. But when you look at your use case and you look into these services, what they can do, it might be just what you need. For example, I want to run Docker containers alone, and Fargate just works well. Or I want to run ECS without Fargate because I like maintaining my own Docker host system. And depending on the different use case, maybe I'll say, yeah, this is good for me, this is not good for me. I get to customize it to my own need. And if everything's managed by AWS, then I lose my customization, or I'll call it the God mode that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think both have a point. I think what Farid is saying is also definitely a thing that's happening. We see more than zero services that are interesting from first perspective, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, it's very often that the service gets ruled out because of some use case that is not actually possible with said service. We've done a bunch of stuff
for the service that's going to replace CloudWatch.
Yeah.
Because we got somewhere with CloudWatch, now it's time to launch a new service that takes away all your troubles and replaces CloudWatch in many ways, but is actually separate.
Well, recently they've been putting a lot of efforts into making CloudWatch better because they're competing with Prometheus and Grafana. And at the same time, they're also adopted Prometheus and Grafana to be run as managed services, which cost a lot lesser than CloudWatch metrics. Too expensive.
I don't agree that they've made that they've invested a lot in making CloudWatch better. The last thing that they did was dynamic dashboards and like maintenance window, basic stuff. But yeah, containers.
The next topic is a bit more businessy topic, but basically next week-ish, on July 5th, sorry, it's actually next month-ish, on July 5th, Jeff Bezos will step back from being the CEO of Amazon. But more importantly, that means that Andy Jassy is stepping into the role officially. And last week, I believe, the new CEO for AWS already started. So Adam Selipsky will take over for Andy Jassy. And I'm quite interested to see what happens in the if anything, in the strategic execution of Amazon. I think that's a bigger thing than AWS, because obviously Andy Jassy comes with all of the experience from the AWS cloud, which is it could almost be two separate companies. It's very differently run than Amazon itself in many ways. I'm quite curious to see what will happen if he brings over some of that. How to say that? Some of those business practices from AWS to Amazon.
Well, one thing I can see for sure for this kind of transition is maybe another 7 different ways how to purchase something on Amazon.
I don't know. My first thought was it's the 5th of July, right after the 4th of July. Everyone's going to be super hungover. Is that really the best day to start?
Am I still drunk, or do we have a new CEO?
Or, it's a better time to say, let's put in a new CEO when nobody's paying attention, so there'll be no media critics or whatnot.
Yeah, well, I think that Jeff being one of the richest people in the world, this is always going to be news, because if the guy snores in his sleep, it's news somehow. Which I think
yes, but then at the same time as well, we can see that Andy Jassy definitely, although yes, he created 17 different ways to run containers, but it cannot be denied that a lot of these things are like, I would not go stretch it as far as saying revolutionary, but it's something, right? It's something that always got us thinking, oh, wow, that's really cool. Why didn't they have that from the very beginning? So I think in this case, Amazon will have more of that kind of factor. Oh, this is so cool. Why didn't we have this from the very beginning?
It might be. I mean, you make a good point. If you compare AWS to Azure, and you don't go into the weeds of the exact services that it provides, one of the overarching things that I see, at least, is that AWS is continuously trying to shape the way, where Azure is mostly trying to catch up, and the differentiation that path that Azure takes is not necessarily that big. And interesting to see if Amazon keeps doing that as well.
Yes, but also at the same time, yeah, and as you said at the very beginning, so I'm very curious what the new CEO for AWS where he will take the direction of the organization too, and what will it be like? Because we are so used to what Andy Jassy's behavior or pattern in terms of services and release, but the new CEO is virtually new, and so maybe the next few months will be the defining moments, just like U.S. presidency, the first 100 days. So perhaps it could be the first 100 days or the first few months for him to define his, what do you call it, chairmanship or CEOship of AWS.
Yeah, I mean, probably the big technology strategy has been set for the next couple of years, so we won't see it there. But a new CEO is probably going to make some changes to make it clear that there's a new person in the building. Yeah. But I guess we'll see in a couple of months from now.
The new CEO was the CEO of the Tableau Public.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping at least one thing he could do, make the AWS quick site platform, make it more like Tableau.
Yeah, like basic functionalities.
Well,
no bugs.
They should just buy Tableau and make it a first-class citizen of AWS. Get it over with.
Yes.
Because Power BI is, as far as I'm understanding it, at least kicking quick sites behind.
This is one of the spaces that AWS is not a leader. In the other spaces, AWS always falls on the leader category, but in the case of business intelligence tools, falls on the niche players. And I really hope that you'll move on to the leaders. It's getting awkward.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge space. We're actually exploring it within HeleCloud right now, and the possibilities and the business value is insane from what I can see. Our next topic is a non-AWS topic, a vulnerability in vCenter. That actually has it's the vSphere client. Has a remote code execution on port 443, which is kind of the worst of the worst. And so it receives scorecards that I hope my child will get in school. A 9.8 out of 10 is quite impressive.
What? 9.8 out of 10? That covers like almost every large organization out there using vCenter, which is, I think, more than half of them. I don't recall a time where I walk into a client who owns a data center somewhere, say that we are using vCenter.
I still see them.
Imagine their face scrambling.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you read the article that I just put in the comments, it actually says that within a day of VMware patching the vulnerability in February, the proof of concept exploits appeared from at least 6 different sources, and those are just the ones that were visible. So I think it's one of those that is extremely visible and usable. And that is quite serious, and it means that if you're running a vSphere, in this case a vSphere client, you should absolutely upgrade ASAP, because
Funny thing is that those organizations don't always quit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but then again, also patching this is not going to be easy, right? Because I haven't seen exactly how to patch this or upgrade a vCenter. It might include some little bit of downtime, and I can imagine how this organization are going to deal with downtimes, for something that may never shut down. Maybe, I don't know, in the last few years. And on top of that,
it's on the control plane.
Yeah, it's a control plane, but then sometimes there is like an effect, right? When the control plane is not available. So I'm not a vCenter expert, but from what I know, sometimes when control planes are not available, and then when it comes back up, havocs just break.
Yeah. I'm very happy that we don't have to deal with these kind of upgrades. It's one of those things that isn't a direct benefit of AWS that you realize once you start using the platform, but then like a year down the line, you're like, actually, all of this stuff that I used to have to think about is just not in there anymore. And it's quite interesting how a whole I compare it as calculating sums in your head versus using a calculator. It's not that you cannot do it; it's just that you don't really need to be able to do it because now you have a calculator.
So I took a quick look into this article that you posted, Walter, and a few of these top companies that are affected are interesting one. But I can say in this list, there's one company, maybe I'm wrong, does not need to worry about it because, if I'm not mistaken, the data center just recently burned down.
Well, that was one of dozens of data centers, so I'm pretty sure they'll just add it to the list.
What a blessing! One less problem with.
Yeah. Okay. The next article is quite interesting, in my opinion. There's a new AWS region coming up probably in the first half of 2022. And this time it's United Arab Emirates. And that's quite interesting because UAE is mostly a Microsoft place. So for them to put a region there is, in my opinion, a clear way to expand the footprint in the Arab world as well, as compete with Microsoft's offering there, because the simple reality is that a lot of business happens out of UAE, and having a local region there is quite impactful, and also for a lot of the neighboring countries, UAE seems to be a good place to put their data.
Yeah,
and
colleague's first comment was when we were discussing this internally, I can see a lot of migrations happening next year from Dubai region to UAE region.
Bahrain.
Bahrain, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, Bahrain. Yeah, Dubai's in UAE.
No, because I think some companies were using that region, but I couldn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have customers in Bahrain.
Yeah, but one thing, the way I see it, is not just about competing with Microsoft or migration, right? I think here is just because UAE is just like in the middle of between Asia and Europe. And often enough, when we want to serve traffic to our customers, we always think about, okay, Europe for European customers, Asia for Asian customers, right? The two different parts of the continent. And then there's something in the middle that is like only Bahrain. But then again, there's also some restrictions and not everything's available in Bahrain. But now you think about it. When you have a global infrastructure, you want your infrastructure to be everywhere. And if you have customers in Asia, you don't want your fallback region to be just in Asia or in Europe, because Europe is sometimes too far for customers that rely on latency. Now that adding UAE and alongside Bahrain, now you can fall back to another region which is even closer to you. And so we are thinking like Dubai, just like flights, we have like a layover all the time in the Middle East just to get to Europe. Or so now from a central location like Bahrain and Dubai, it could get more concentrated in the future, because now from this single location, we can serve the entire region, or we can serve it as a backup for the nearby regions.
Yeah, the funny part is that it's an extension of the direct connect and CloudFront stuff. So while to the world it seems like it's a new region, I think what they're actually doing is expanding a data center and outfitting it with kit that allows for much more massive deployment.
Yeah, sorry, another thing is that a lot of companies, they would like to keep their data in the same country that they're based on, or at least the sensitive data. And because of that, sometimes they decide not to use another provider because they have a data center in that region. And in the case of UAE, Azure has a data center there. So that's also another business opportunity for AWS to grab more market share in there.
Yeah, and I think that's also the reason behind, for instance, Switzerland, because I think the Swiss market itself is not that big, but the market for companies who want to host their data physically in Switzerland is a whole different story, and it's similar with UAE. So quite interesting, and India and Indonesia have the same situation where. Actually, it's a quite different situation. In India and Indonesia, it's just really good for local companies because they're such large countries. It's good for local companies to have local presence, and those markets are actually huge, both India and Indonesia.
Well, speaking of India and Indonesia, it's also because the cost of internet is very expensive there. Therefore, having a local presence reduces that cost a lot. And just like Farid said, because I've been following the fintech news and the rules and regulations quite a bit, right? A lot of these countries require these fintech companies to have the data processed locally. They cannot go to any other region. I mean, you could use the global AWS infrastructure for transiting data, right? But you cannot process, say, your payment outside of your own country. So in Dubai, it would be interesting because there are also definitely a lot of financial companies that opens up their headquarters there, and they could do a lot of their payment processing in there. I know in Bahrain, there are quite a few as well. In Egypt, there's quite a few companies or fintech companies that has to process their data locally.
Yeah, and we've spoken with online gambling companies. It's the same thing. They're in super highly regulated markets, and one of the interesting parts there is that if you offer online gambling games, the amount of worrying you have to do about where your data resides for players in different countries is quite a headache, and very often that leads to deployments of the same infrastructure in like 10 different places, while you could easily run it from a single place, technologically speaking. But unfortunately, for regulations' sake, you have to then maintain 10 different infrastructures that are all the same just because of the data residency.
I remember we had a customer who wanted to implement some infrastructure in a region that was like the mecca for gambling because of the regulations there, but there wasn't an AWS region. I forgot what it was because I'm geographically challenged, but they had to use OpenStack.
Yeah. It's probably Malta. In Malta, it's a lot of those companies are based there because of the residency regulations.
I don't think, but it could be.
Yeah, maybe it's somewhere else, but Malta is one of those places that has an insane amount of data centers for no other reason than it's legally interesting to park your data there and not have to worry about a whole bunch of different things. So.
I believe it's also in the European Union, and that helped a lot with other things.
Yes, a strange thing to have to worry about, to be honest. It's not, as engineers, we like to think about the best technical solution and not the best legal solution to a problem. The last topic is well outside of my comfort zone, but we happen to have a expert on the call who can tell us something about this. Lambda extensions. I looked through the article and I understand what's going on, but I might very much like to hear from Farid how what he sees there.
So this is really about, as it says, it's extensions, and it would allow basically third parties to be able to collect more data or do more validation, and take more control during runtime of AWS Lambdas. And the way it works is that a third party yourself can place a process inside your Lambda runtime, and that would be like invoked as part of the normal Lambda invocation, and then it can use the extensions API to listen for the events and then collect data or validate the Lambda event. And as a consequence, now we have all these new actual extensions in the console from the different companies to for data collection and security. So I see that we have like Datadog, Splunk, Sentry, Checkpoint. Those are all like really good additions. Last week, I was with a client doing a well architecture review, and then one of the things that came out of the serverless lens was that they should do a runtime protection. And I was like, as of right now, what you can do is very barely minimal, and it's going to be very difficult. But with the new extensions, for them, adding more runtime protection is as much as just going and enabling it, and then everything will be automatic behind the scenes. So that's great.
Nice. Yeah, well, because I looked at it and I saw mostly observability. The third-party vendors that are available right now are mostly observability
and security.
And security, yeah.
Yeah, I like how they implemented it with HashiCorp Vault for secrets management, because that would allow better control on the access that the code of the Lambda gets, right?
Yeah.
And Vault's famous for good handling of security keys.
Yeah, but the way I see it too, right? It's definitely going to have an impact on your Lambda, because now we are not only running your code in runtime, you're running all sort of extensions in the runtime itself. So now you need to benchmark properly on what amount of CPU do you need? What amount of resources or memory do you need? So maybe a function that usually use the most minimal amount of resources needs double or triple it because you add too many extensions to it because you're too excited. Like, you have the Vault, then you have the Datadog, maybe you have the Sentry. You start plugging in all this kind of little extension. So from one small little super fast Lambda become a very bloated Lambda with extensions. Does it not remind us of like smartphones with all the bloatware?
Yeah, I guess this is something good you have to keep an eye on. And I guess it goes for the rest of all your application. Really, like whenever you're adding a dependency to your application, you always have to wonder, is this real? Does it bring, is it as light as the benefits that it would bring? Is I'm okay with this wasting performance or not?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a thing. I mean, very simply for less technical people in the audience, it's the similar thing with let's say you take your Firefox or your Chrome browser. There are 100 plugins that potentially do an uninteresting thing, but if you only use that functionality once every blue moon, then having that plugin enabled all the time is actually just eating into your resource usage and making things slower during all that time. So it's really a cost-benefit kind of assessment that you have to do to see if an extension is worth it or not.
Yep.
We have reached 9:30 or 10:30 in Bulgaria.
Yes. It's time to go off. We normally give 2 minutes to our guests to promote themselves or ideas that they hold dear. So, Choon Ming, want to go first?
Honestly, I don't have any ideas at the moment. I'm more curious about why do you still have the CRT monitor behind you?
Oh, it's my husband's studio. So there's a lot of toys and he makes electronic music there, and this is his gaming machine because he's a sucker for old technology. I don't think he has any time to switch it on these days now that we have children, but maybe one day.
Yes. Farid.
Now I have nothing in mind, but I can say, please do serverless and make my job easier. And then, maybe keep an eye on the HeleCloud blog, and I'm writing an article on how to nuke your AWS account.
Yes.
And that's going to be interesting for those who have production workloads, because they should not do it. But for those that are learning AWS, that would be one way to make sure they don't go over budget or don't enable things by accident. But given that I have a 3 weeks holiday starting from next week, I think it might take some time for me to prepare it.
We'll look forward to it.
All right.
Well,
thanks everyone for being with us. Thanks Farid and Choon Ming for taking part in this episode. And we wish everyone a happy Friday and a work-free weekend.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Lena.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.